What if I told you that a disease affecting 500 million people worldwide, a disease your doctor probably told you was permanent, can be reversed? Not managed, not slowed down, actually reversed. And what if I told you the method doesn't involve a single drug, a single surgery, or a single supplement? That it's something your body already knows how to do if you give it the right conditions. 86%. That's the remission rate. Confirmed, peer-reviewed, replicated for people who do one specific thing. We'll get to the number, but first, let's talk about what's actually happening inside your body, because once you understand it, you can't unsee it. Stay with me. This one's going to change how you think about food, fat, and your own biology. Part 1. The lie you were told about diabetes. Let me start with a thought experiment. Picture two people. Person A was diagnosed with type 2 diabetes 3 years ago. They did the work, lost the weight, and for the last 12 months, their blood sugar has been completely normal without a single medication. Person B has never been diagnosed with anything. They're healthy, but they're overweight, their blood sugar spikes after every meal, and they're heading in a direction that every doctor in the room can see. Who is actually healthier? Technically, person A is still classified as diabetic. They have a diagnosis in their chart. Person B is medically fine. But person B might develop full-blown diabetes within the next 6 months. Person A, if they keep doing what they're doing, might never see high blood sugar again for the rest of their life. The only difference between them is 3 words: prior medical history. That's it. That's the whole gap, a label in a file. In 2021, and this didn't make nearly enough headlines, the American Diabetes Association and its European counterparts officially agreed type 2 diabetes can enter a state of remission. Not theoretical remission, not we're cautiously optimistic remission, formal medical consensus-backed remission. The definition is precise. Maintain a glycated hemoglobin, your HbA1c, below 6.5% for 3 months or more without any medication. That's remission. That's reversed. Part 2. Why this disease is scarier than you think. Before we go further, I need you to feel the weight of what we're talking about. Because one of the strangest things I see is how casually people treat this diagnosis. Type 2 diabetes. Oh well, take the pill, avoid bread. Life goes on. It doesn't just go on, not quietly. This disease is a slow demolition. Year after year, it damages blood vessels and nerves across your entire body. The results? Blindness. Blindness. Gangrene, where tissue dies because blood can no longer reach it. Amputations of toes, feet, entire legs. Kidney failure that sentences you to a dialysis machine 3 times a week, every week for the rest of your life. Heart attacks at 50, strokes that leave you unable to speak. And none of it happens loudly. That's the cruelest part. It creeps. Now add this. In the United States alone, the number of people with type 2 diabetes has grown 7 to 8 times since the 1980s. Not percent, times. China and India are now posting the fastest growth rates ever recorded. We have better drugs than ever. We know more about this disease than ever, and it is still winning. Something is deeply wrong, and the answer isn't in the pharmacy. Part 3. The real cause, and it's not what you think. Sugar doesn't cause type 2 diabetes. I know, you've heard the opposite your whole life, but it's an oversimplification that has misled millions of people. Here's what actually causes it: a chronic caloric surplus, consistently eating more energy than your body burns over a long period of time. That's the mechanism. Full stop. You can get there with cake. You can also get there with pasta, with dumplings, with fried potatoes, with a perfectly healthy avocado and brown rice bowl, eaten in portions that are just slightly too large every single day for 10 years. The surplus is what matters, not the specific food that created it. So what does a chronic surplus actually do to your body? It creates fat. That part you know. But here's what most people don't know. Where that fat ends up depends almost entirely on your genetics. The warehouse analogy. Some people have a high personal fat threshold. Think of it as a large biological warehouse under the skin. Their body can pack away fat subcutaneously for years. They gain weight, their belly grows. People might call them overweight. But the critical organs, the liver, the pancreas, stay relatively clean. The machinery keeps running. Then there are people with a low personal fat threshold. Their warehouse fills up fast, and once it's full, the body has to put the overflow somewhere. It starts depositing fat inside the liver, inside the pancreas, between the intestines, places it was never designed to go. Here's where it gets alarming. These people often don't look overweight. By today's standards, and our standards are badly distorted because the average person now weighs 15 to 20 kilograms more than a century ago, they might look completely normal, a slight belly, nothing serious. But internally, the flood has already started. Think of it like a pot left on the stove with the top running. While there's room, water fills safely. The moment it overflows, it goes everywhere, onto the floor, into the cabinets, causing damage it was never supposed to cause. Part 4. The lock with gum in it. Once fat starts accumulating in the liver and pancreas, what scientists call ectopic fat, it sets off a chain reaction. The liver gets clogged with fat and starts overproducing triglycerides. It stops responding normally to insulin. This is insulin resistance, and it's the engine of type 2 diabetes. Here's the analogy that makes it click. Insulin is a key. The cell's insulin receptor is a lock. In a healthy body, the key slides in perfectly. The door opens, glucose enters the cell, blood sugar drops, done. But when fat infiltrates the cell, specifically compounds called diacylglycerols and ceramides that form during fat metabolism, it's like someone jammed chewing gum and broken matchsticks into that lock. You can have 10 keys, 100 keys, the lock will not turn. And ceramides, they form fastest when you combine saturated fat with carbohydrates in the same meal, fried potatoes with pork, buttered bread with cheese. You don't need anything sweet. The combination of starchy carbs and saturated animal fat does the metabolic damage, faster than either one alone. Meanwhile, the fat inside the pancreas starts suffocating the beta cells. Beta cells, the ones that produce insulin, begin responding more and more slowly. You eat a meal, blood glucose spikes, the insulin response lags 5 minutes, 10 minutes, long enough for glucose to stay dangerously elevated. Over months and years, those cells deteriorate. The lag becomes a permanent deficit. The blood sugar never fully normalizes. That's type 2 diabetes, not a mystery, a sequence. And then there's the final piece that locks everything in place. Mitochondria, the tiny power plants inside every cell. They process the energy you eat. Chronically overload them, flood them with more fuel than they can burn, and they malfunction. Think of forcing a full fire hose through a kitchen drain. It doesn't work. The system backs up. Damaged mitochondria can't perform beta oxidation, the process by which your body burns fat for fuel. So fat accumulates even faster. Insulin resistance deepens. The cycle becomes self-reinforcing. This is the vicious loop, and understanding it is the first step to breaking it. Part 5. Why drugs don't fix this. If the entire problem is a chronic energy surplus building fat in the wrong places, the solution is obvious. Reduce the surplus, remove the fat, restore the function. Not a drug, not a supplement, not a metabolism booster that somehow converts energy into thin air. Let's talk about what medications actually do. Metformin, one of the most prescribed drugs on Earth, lowers blood glucose. It treats the symptom. The ectopic fat, still there. The insulin resistance at the cellular level, still there. The energy surplus creating it all, still there. Metformin puts a lid on the consequence while the cause continues building underneath. And there's something else about metformin that doesn't get nearly enough attention. It inhibits mitochondrial function, the same mitochondria you need to recover fat-burning capacity. You're suppressing the blood sugar readout while quietly sabotaging one of your body's main repair mechanisms. You fix one thing, you break another. What about the new weight loss drugs? The GLP-1 agonists, semaglutide, Ozempic, the drugs everyone's talking about? They work, I'll be honest. For weight loss, they're genuinely effective. They suppress appetite, slow digestion, and people lose significant weight while taking them. But stop taking them? Within about 1.7 years, the vast majority of people regain essentially all the weight they lost because the underlying wiring, the habits, the patterns, the reward system that drove the overeating in the first place was never changed, only overridden. And remember, official remission means no medication. So these drugs are, by definition, not a path to remission. You either take them for life, a legitimate choice, but an expensive and dependent one, or you face the same problem you had before. Part 6. The number that changes everything. Now, the number I promised you at the start. The DIRECT trial, one of the most rigorous real-world studies ever conducted on type 2 diabetes reversal. Average participant weight, around 100 kilograms. Structured weight loss program, tracked for years. Lose 15 kilograms, 15% of body weight, and your probability of full remission is 86%. Not an improvement in markers, not a reduction in medication dose. Full remission, normal blood sugar, no drugs, confirmed, replicated, peer-reviewed. 86%. Broader meta-analyses fill in the full picture. Lose 10% of your body weight, remission becomes statistically probable. Lose 15%, approximately 50% remission rate. Lose 30%, 80 to 90% remission rate. For someone at 120 kilograms, losing 30% means losing 36 kilograms. Major, but entirely realistic. Bariatric surgery patients achieve this routinely, which is exactly why those surgical outcomes in the 1990s first proved that reversal was possible. And here's the piece that surprises most people. You don't have to be very overweight for this to apply to you. Remember those people with a low personal fat threshold? The ones who develop diabetes at a BMI of 26 or 27? For them, losing just 6.5% of their body weight, roughly 4.7 kilograms for someone at 72 kilograms, produces remission in 70% of cases. I'm not that overweight is not a reason to give up. In some ways, it's a reason to be more optimistic. The amount you need to lose might be smaller than you ever imagined. Part 7. The uncomfortable truth about why people fail. Here's the part nobody wants to talk about. Losing the weight? Hard, but doable. Thousands of people do it every year. Keeping it off? That's where the system breaks down. The DIRECT study's 5-year follow-up showed that only 10 to 13% of participants maintained their remission. Everyone else regained the weight, and with it, the diabetes came back. 10 to 13%. That's not a failure of the biology. The biology cooperated perfectly. That's a failure of motivation architecture. Let me explain what I mean by that. Deep in the brain's subcortical structures, in a region called the ventral tegmental area, which produces dopamine, two types of signals are constantly fighting for control of your behavior. Bottom-up signals, impulse-driven. Eat the food in front of you, rest instead of moving, get the instant dopamine hit. These signals don't think about next year or next decade. They operate entirely in the present moment, and they are extraordinarily powerful. Top-down signals. These come from the prefrontal cortex, your planning brain. They carry long-term goals, consequences, meaning. They can override the bottom-up impulses, but only when they're strong enough, only when they're real enough. The people who stay in remission, that 10 to 13%, have done something profound. They've rebuilt their reward hierarchy. Health isn't an abstract good intention for them. It's visceral, urgent, present. The image of losing a foot isn't a distant statistic, it's their foot. The thought of being dependent on family for basic care isn't hypothetical, it's a future they can feel. The desire to run with their grandchildren, to travel, to move freely at 70, these aren't nice ideas. They're competing in real time with the impulse to reach for food after a hard day. For the other 87%, the urgency fades. Life resumes its normal pace. The crisis recedes into memory. Stress builds up. Old patterns reassert themselves. And gradually, not all at once, but gradually, the weight comes back. This is not weakness. Willpower is a finite resource. It gets depleted by decisions, stress, bad sleep, uncertainty. Relying on willpower alone to maintain a lifestyle change is like trying to bail out a sinking boat with a teacup. It works for a while. Then it stops. The underlying problem was never addressed. The brain still saw food as the primary reward, exercise as a chore. The scale changed, the wiring didn't. Part 8. 2 tasks, 1 life. So what does this actually mean for you? Let's make it concrete. Task 1. Lose the fat. The specific target depends on where you're starting. Significantly overweight? Aim for 15 to 30% of your current body weight. Moderate weight with low fat threshold? 5 to 7% may be enough. The method matters less than the consistency. Calorie restriction, low carb, time-restricted eating, increased activity, all of these work if they create a sustained deficit. But physical activity deserves special mention. It doesn't just burn calories, it directly repairs mitochondrial function, attacking one of the core drivers of insulin resistance at the source. It's doing double duty. Task 2, and this one determines whether any of it lasts, keep it off. This isn't about diet maintenance. This is about rebuilding your relationship with food, movement, and reward. Ask yourself honestly what actually motivates you. Not what should motivate you, what does. Because if the answer is, I know it's healthier, that's not enough. That's a cognitive belief, not an emotional driver. The brain runs on emotion, not logic. You also need to be honest about both sides of the energy equation. Some people think, I don't eat that much. But if you're sedentary, desk job, no structured exercise, minimal movement throughout the day, even modest food intake can keep you in surplus. The equation is always intake versus expenditure. You need to move both levers. Close. Type 2 diabetes is not a life sentence. The biology is actually on your side. The chain of events is well understood, and every link in it is reversible. Reduce the caloric surplus, drain the ectopic fat, restore insulin sensitivity, give the beta cells room to recover. The disease goes into remission. The numbers are real. An 86% remission rate at 15% weight loss isn't a marketing claim. It's peer-reviewed science. And for people who aren't even particularly overweight, the threshold is even lower. The harder part is the long game. That 10 to 13% who stay in remission after 5 years aren't genetically superior or superhuman. They built a life where health is genuinely motivating, not just intellectually agreed upon, but emotionally driven. The biology followed. Everything you need to reverse this is already within reach. The science is clear. The path is mapped. The only question is whether the motivation is real enough and durable enough to walk it. If this changed how you think about diabetes, share it with someone who needs to hear it, because the chances are they're waiting for exactly this. Subscribe and hit the bell so you don't miss the next one. Thank you for watching, and here's to your good health. Goodbye.